thank you for taking the time to listen to and see my presentation. I'm going to talk about some interesting things we're doing with a live data stream together with startup oil company in the energy sector. So I'm guessing I'm kind of doing the same thing as you guys are doing now, sitting at a temporary office at my home. I was, of course, hoping to do this presentation in Houston at the CERAWeek Global Energy Conference. But as all of you know, like many other events, this was cancelled and moved online. I'm still going to imagine that we're in a room together to try to keep this interesting. And also, I would appreciate that even though we're not in the same room, that you could provide some questions or feedback to me, and we might have some fruitful discussions. I'll get back to that later on how to do that. So briefly about me, my name is Håkon, Norwegian name. I work as a software architect in ABB in our energy industries business line around digital. My background when it comes to academics is in cybernetics and robotics. So I'm really into automating things and combining physical and software to solve concrete problems. I'm based in Oslo, Norway at the moment. So working for the last 10 plus years, building software, often closely together with the customers, I gained a fascination for how people and culture influence technology and the other way around. I personally seen software that never got the adoption rate we thought it would have, but also seen software that has worked very well for the end user and they're really happy. So based on that, I made some reflections on how to operationalize software. And my experience is that if you want the software to really stick, you have to start with the people and the culture of the company where you're deploying your software. Of course, you also need high quality functions in your software, but if it doesn't fit the people, it won't get used. I think it's as simple as that. If you combine the two, having solutions you see that really solve problems, and also have done like a quick analysis that this fits into how they're actually working day to day, your software will be highly appreciated by the end user, I think. Another thing I find interesting is testing out new ways of working. As digital strategies are rolled out among customers and vendors, this is now probably more relevant than ever. And to get real change, you have to start with looking at the whole business landscape. I think it has become easier to break out of traditional vendor-customer roles and also to inject inspiration from other environments. During the last years, we have been looking to where we think a lot of innovation has happened, especially in digital value creation. And in that aspect, you cannot overlook these guys. So this picture is from the Startup Lab offices in Oslo, where we are a partner. Startup Lab helps with early investments to new companies. You get an office and they provide mentorship and also contacts in the industry. So one such contact is us in ABB. And I think just by sitting in such an environment a day, I get inspiration. I feel sparking of some new ideas on how to do things. They just provide a different kind of vibe than a traditional office. So what recognizes a startup? Well, first off, they're of course innovative in their nature. They seem to have a lot of fun, and they typically have a quite free and flexible work situation, I think. At the same time, they have very high work ethics. They work late nights. They stay in there through their challenges. It's allowed to question everything and stay curious. And of course, they have tons of ownership over the product that they're building. It's very normal to see we're changing the world kind of mentality. Also, we see that they typically focus a lot on the user experience and have the user in the center. And their product shall be extremely easy to start using to drive the adoption. Typically, they use some sort of as a service business model. So it's easy to start using, and they focus a lot on nailing the product, which is crucial to keep the customers and to grow their customer base. But working in industry, this is what you typically see, right? Industrial assets are engineering feats that often controls dangerous physical forces. This would probably not work very well with the outside-the-box thinkers of startups. Even though these assets were designed by really innovative people back when created, this environment does not represent the fail-fast strategies one wants to test out new ideas in the digital age. But could you combine the two? Could you combine the fast-paced new ideas from startups with these industrial giants? That's the challenge we're trying to address for the Draugen oil field together with its new owner OKEA, and the path we're trying out to create real value for the customer is what I will talk about today. Just quickly about the Draugen oil field. Draugen is a tail producer, and that means it's in its last phase of production. It's located outside the middle part of Norway, approximately out from where the city of Trondheim is located. It's 370 meters tall. That's about 1,200 feet. It was discovered back in 1984, and it's a single column concrete platform. And I have a fun fact about single column platforms, and that's that they typically move in a figure-of-8 orbit pattern. So if you easily get seasick, you might want to try a platform with more legs. So some facts about OKEA. OKEA is a new independent E&P company in Norway. They were founded back in 2015 and went public in 2019, last year, and they have assets only on the Norwegian continental shelf. They're about 200 employees, produce approximately 19,000 barrels of oil equivalents per day at, you see, $11. And they have a strategy to grow through mergers and acquisition and low-cost field development, and have a lot of focus on staying lean, I would say. So, how did our collaborative engagement with OKEA start? As many of you probably know, during the last years, there's been some major changes on the owner side on the Norwegian continental shelf. The majority of found oil fields are or have already entered tail production. So this, combined with other strategies for how to invest their money, has caused several of the previous owners, these were typically oil majors, to de-invest their assets in Norway, and has then opened up room for new players. These new companies and alliances that sees healthy business in squeezing out the last part of the toothpaste, so to say, are mainly seen as a good thing for Norway, that we keep investing somewhat in energy production. We have done large investments here, so the infrastructure is in place. So to keep running it seems like a good thing, and this also, of course, keeps a continued demand for jobs around the less populated parts of Norway, where typically a lot of these organizations are placed. So one of these assets is the Draugen oil field, and one of the new players is OKEA. We have delivered an extensive part of our portfolio to Draugen and had a very good relationship with the previous owner, so this change was definitely going to impact us, and they represented an exciting change, I would say. So we started engaging with OKEA, both with initial management meetings as well as some early sales meetings. And as a company with a large portfolio, we of course wanted to tell and show OKEA about what we could offer. An interesting thing happened in one of these meetings. OKEA came back to us and said that, yeah, we like your solutions, but you guys know Draugen better than we do. Can you rather present us with an actual use case? Tell us what we should do. And of course, this is an opportunity that was kind of different than what we've experienced before, but something we gladly wanted to do, since we now would kind of become really integrated into the Draugen operation. And for us, there was an obvious place we could start creating some value together. At the Draugen platform, we have ABB service called Process Performance Services that briefly helps our customers monitor and increase their operational performance, where we use our experience in chemical and control engineering. This service runs monthly, where our engineers looks at quite an extensive data set, find problems and opportunities, and suggest actions for the customers through traditional meetings. Actions could then be changes in control logic in the automation system. It could be how they operate, set point changes, and so on. Into these meetings, we also get the input from the customers. Obviously, they monitor their asset 24/7. And when they see something or have some ideas, some of these things can be applicable or input to this service. So our idea here was to connect this service with live data streaming. And there were mainly two reasons for this. The first thing was we saw that quite extensive amount of time was used by our experts on retrieving data. And the reason for that could be everything from just logging onto systems, using IT systems, so on, and also doing manipulation of this data before the actual insight analytics started. We concluded with that this could be up to 4 days of work, and these are 4 days that a data stream could free up, so our engineers could use time on solving real problems and coming up with opportunities instead. So that was the first part of our suggestion. Connect to the data, reduce the amount of time used on actually just retrieving the data. The second thing here is that by connecting ABB to a live data stream, we would have access to the data at the same time as OKEA. And what would this achieve? Well, we would be able to see issues and opportunities at the same time as the end user, which turn means that our meetings and our problem solving would be much more efficient and be done in a much more parallel way, and hopefully we would solve problems quicker. Basically, we would become an extension of the OKEA team in a much larger degree, and someone they can discuss with continuously. So those were the two basic wins we would get from connecting this service to the data stream. OKEA would get a higher degree of utilization of the ABB experts, and also we would get a more rewarding way of working that gives our experts also a more continuous ownership to the asset. So in the next meeting, we suggested these ideas to the OKEA team, together with the estimates on savings from the efficiency gains, as well as the gains from solving more problems and solving them faster. We also suggested that this was going to be going to be delivered on a subscription-based model. And why did we want a subscription-based model? Well, again, two reasons. The first is it's a low risk for the customer. They can pause or stop the subscription whenever they want. If the stream did not give the expectations they wanted, well, we can pause it or stop it. And secondly, a subscription incentivizes us in a different way than a traditional service or product delivery model does. So there's a continuous stream here of money coming in, giving that we keep the solution running smooth and staying relevant for the customer. The idea here is that it's the same way as with Netflix. If Netflix doesn't add any new material that you want to watch, you just stop the subscription. Okay, I thought this was a good idea and really in line with what they expected from ABB and our prior knowledge about the platform. We also agreed that we would now try to work more integrated using the same tools, and that this would help them solve problems faster, as well as utilize the competency they get from the service in a better way. And again, they were showing kind of how agile they were, directly starting to discussing what this would affect on their network capacity to get things kicked off. So this meeting was in March, and in September we had the stream set up and ready to go, which is, at least from my experience, a very fast turnaround from an idea to actual implementation. Oil and gas rig. So I think the whole integrated team with OKEA and ABB were quite happy with what we had come up with, both in terms of this new way of working together. And also, yeah, with this data stream, we can probably create a lot of new value, and it would probably spark some new ideas. And also that we were able to get this up and running in such a short amount of time, I think is kind of showing how efficient we were working together, and we wanted to celebrate that. But how do you celebrate something that's basically virtual, right? How do you celebrate that you get live data? We concluded that we needed something with a high visual impact to really engage people and make them understand the potential value of this data stream and what it could have and the new way of working. To kind of spice it up even a bit more, one of the guys in the team came up with the idea of having a count down to the actual meeting or event where we would celebrate this thing and show this new visual that we had developed. And we all thought it was a good idea and kind of different, a bit more like startup thing to do than what we're used to. So yeah, that's cool. Let's try to make that. And we sent out a meeting invitation to the actual day that this stream would go live, and also a link to a page that they can click on, and then they would see this. And to pump up the energy, we also had some music in the background and got people to count down from 10. And yeah, so the energy was high, and then at the end of the counter, we showed our first initial extra value we created, and that's this dashboard here. So the idea was, as I briefly mentioned, that we could not just make the service more efficient. We needed something more so people understood what potential this way of working could have. So this dashboard is a real-time overview of the platform, the Dragon platform. It's accessible over the web for everyone in OKEA and their partners, including, of course, ABB. It's now also used as a showcase to show the production on Dragon to externals and partners, and also as a living proof that they actually have data at their fingertips, that they're really becoming digital and data-driven. Since it's in the cloud now, it's available from everywhere. They can use their own accounts, so it's like a single sign-on, same thing as you, for instance, do with Office 365 or some Gmail or whatever solution you use in the cloud. And there's role-based access. So externals would typically not get to see all the data, but would get some parts of the data. So as I mentioned, now 200 plus OKEA users have access to this, the partners in the oil field, as well as the 30 ABB users. We also have a partnership with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise that is showing off their edge solutions and hardware using this dashboard, showing kind of what types of value that their offerings can provide in real life. Okay, so some more numbers on the data stream. I know I really like to know numbers to get an understanding of what things are, and there's probably some geeks out there that appreciates it. On the left here, we try to visualize the amount of data we're streaming per time. And then, if you look at the typical 4G mobile phone, you are able to download this much amount of data. On the Dragon field, we're just streaming one of these, I don't know how many boxes, with data. So it shows that compared to what we're used to on our mobile phones, it's not a lot of data. It's more on the ISDN kind of a level. Even though this seems like not that much data, we're actually now streaming 5,000 time series tags. So these are pressures, temperatures, control positions, and so on. And we're getting 150,000 alarms and events per day. So these are process alarms and other events like set point changes and so on coming from the automation system. And we have less than 1 second latency latency in average. So latency is the time it takes from a change happens here in the process to we see it in, for instance, the dashboard I was previously showing. So this data constitutes then 53 megabytes of compressed event data per day and 370 megabytes of time series data compressed per day. And we are, of course, looking at expanding this both in terms of resolution and the amount of tags. There are a lot more data to be retrieved there when we do some adjustments on the sensor and automation side. So going back a bit to how we now are working, I think this stream and also the way we're now connected has made us go somewhat from a linear, traditional or vendor-customer process to an integrated iterative process. And with that also comes the possibility to test out ideas quickly. And the reason for doing this is that the more ideas you test out, the more successes you will also have. Of course, you will get more failures as well. But since this process of going from an idea, developing it, deploying it, and validating it is so efficient, the cost associated with the failures is minimal. And I think this is kind of similar to the way investors in early phase startups also are thinking, where you spread out money on several companies, giving you a higher hit rate of actual successes without spending too much money on the failures. So that's the fail fast mentality that we think will make Draugen have a more efficient operation going forward. We already use this process now to come up with 10 plus new ideas together with OKEA. And just to quickly show a couple we're working on now, you here see the separate constraint management use case we're working on, and also a pump monitoring dashboard that we're working on. So to start with, I won't go too much into the details here since it's so early, but for the first stage separator, it's about seeing that you're operating in the operational envelope, and we are dynamically calculating some constraints here and are updating these things both from the process as well as human observation. Before, this was typically done in Excel and not updated that often. It was also not so easy to share. Now we've enabled this trend application, a web-enabled trend application, which means that everyone can access it, or at least the people that we give access to. And also it's live updated. So instead of a user having to go in, update the Excel spreadsheet, this is now live all the time, and you can go back and forward in time and so on to do a bit more deeper analysis. On the right side here is the pump monitoring dashboard. Before, we had some experts that had to actually log on to the control system to see that their pumps were doing fine. Now there's no need for this anymore, which reduces one security risk. It's always a security issue, a cybersecurity issue to have people log on to the control system. And also, as for the constraint management solution, you can go back in time, be much more flexible than they're used to. We've also added some more data sources. So here you see like a typical process schematic here. We have some trends here and also a trend here of the alarm and event data. And so you can see what's going on in the system in a more holistic way. Yeah, it's web-based again, so it's easily accessible for more people and just helping them be more efficient in the way they collaborate. Trying to sum up some of the key findings of this journey we've done together with OKEA. The first thing we have seen is that the traditional way of doing R&D can be accelerated. When we develop product, we see that sometimes it just takes too long from an idea to it's implemented. And also we see that the real business impact is not necessarily always validated when the products are developed. So by trying out the open innovation model, we think this changes, since we now can test things out continuously by updating the software and deploying it all the time. And new ideas are quickly tested out in actual real operation, and they either succeed or they fail fast. Secondly, we all know that collaboration is hard, but you need collaboration to solve real problems. Typically, things are only driven by meetings and timetables that need to come together, and this is far from efficient, we think. By trying to have more real-time collaboration driven by using the same tools and looking at the same data, we think this changes. Now, sharing a problem is as easy as just sharing a web link, and that changes things and speeds things up. Lastly is the Netflix idea. So how do you make sure that innovation does not stop in the solution? If you look at traditional product development, there is limited incentive to keep innovating on an installation, since you're now focused on the next version or the next place to deploy. That's one of the main reasons to try out subscription-based models. We then stop talking about versions of products, and you always have the latest software with the best features. And we, as the providers of software, are really incentivized to keep innovating and delivering great new features. So this session was about getting things down to earth, even though we're streaming data to the cloud. I hope the use cases shown made sense and that they maybe triggered some ideas on what you can do on your brownfield facility. It seems sometimes like older installations get somewhat forgotten when working with digital, but I truly believe that here is where the most wins will come. Collaboration is key for working more efficiently, so make sure that everyone is incentivized for doing so. Testing out new business models has never been easier than it is now. And as you've seen, the solutions are launched. Now it's time to look at preparing your company's culture and people to work in new ways. And if you would like some input on how you can start or have any feedback or comments, please reach out. You will find more information following the link at the bottom of this slide, or you can contact me directly on email or LinkedIn. I am, as you probably are as well right now, sitting at home and I'm awaiting your input. Thank you for listening and stay safe.